Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the School District of Springfield Township Board of School Directors regular board meeting, September 20th, 2016. Prior to this meeting, we had an executive session to discuss a legal matter. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Reading of the mission statement. Dr. Taratusky, would you?
The mission of the School District of Springfield Township is to educate and develop all students as learners and citizens who are high-achieving, resilient, and responsible in a changing global community.
Thank you. Roll call.
Mr. Chapman. Here. Mr. Salas. Mr. Lapis. Here. Ms. Nelson. Mr. Rayer. Here. Ms. Sarsfield.
Here.
Dr. Taratusky.
Here.
Mr. Taylor. Ms. Lipinski.
Here. Number 6, announcements. The board, at its discretion, may videotape all or any portion of public board meetings, subject to the limitations set forth in Policy 006.2, broadcasting of meetings. Board meetings will be broadcast on Friday afternoon following the board meeting. Are there any public comments on agenda items? Approval of minutes. August 2nd, 2016, interim meeting, board minutes A. August 16th, 2016, regular meeting, board minutes B. Is there a motion? Second? I heard Walter. And any questions or comments?
Mr. Chapman. Mr. Lapis. Mr. Rayer. Yes. Ms. Sarsfield. Dr. Taratusky. Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Approval of Treasurer's Report. Treasurer's Report A. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chapman. Mr. Lapis. Mr. Rayer. Ms. Sarsfield. Dr. Taratusky. Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Reports and information. Student Council Report, Josie Anderson and James Del Monte.
Thank you. Good evening. Well, I'm James Del Monte. I'm the Student Council Co-President with Josie Anderson.
I'm Catherine Nelson, the Vice President. Josie Anderson isn't here tonight.
So, Student Council is the representatives of Springfield, and we need to show, even in the face of all the adversity, that our school is going to make it through it all. We need to calm the fears and gossip that has spread through the student body after the announcement of the loss of our varsity football team season, by showing that Springfield will survive and thrive, by using this event not as a loss, but as an opportunity. Student Council is taking this as a positive opportunity to help mend the lack of school spirit and the traditions that have not been present in the last few years now. We hope that to start traditions that will excite the students and rekindle a sense of school pride and spirit. We have many ideas about this and are excited to see them in action.
Student Council's events this year started off with a huge success with the freshman orientation under the lead of our new advisor, Mrs. Buckley. At this event, the incoming students were able to try lockers, walk their class schedules, and meet with their teachers. The freshmen were then able to start their year off right with popsicles in the cafeteria that morning while getting to socialize with some of their new classmates. This year, Student Council is faced with a new task to raise school spirit. The students have come up with wonderful ideas, including Spirit Week themes for each day during homecoming week, door decorating, and a contest for the most spirited class. The Spirit Week themes include Tie-Dye Day, Hawaiian Day, American Day, Color Day, and Spartan Gear Day. Students are working hard to come up with even more festivities for the pep rally and tailgate.
This Friday is the Student Activities Fair. All the clubs will set up a table advertising their club to get everyone involved. Community Day is also an upcoming event, and Student Council will be sure to be there with the table. Thank you, guys.
Guys, I just wanted to express my appreciation to you and to your sponsor, Mrs. Buckley. Mr. Payne is here this evening along with Dr. Rittenhouse to talk about the football season and all of the things that have transpired. But when we met, and we've met on several occasions, one of the first things that I said to Mr. Payne is we need to talk to the students because we have a number of things that we don't want to lose this season, even though we've lost varsity football. Can you go back and charge the students with coming up ways where we can resurrect some of the activities that we normally would have that are accompanying a varsity football season? So my understanding is he spoke with Mrs. Buckley, and she did that. She came to you and to the rest of the student council. There were many, many ideas that were generated, many of which we actually are considering implementing. We've looked for various ways, for example, to do homecoming, senior night, the tailgate, and so forth. So I just want to thank you and the rest of the student council for really putting your minds together and working hard to come up with some ways where we could have perhaps a big spirit week where we can incorporate a lot of activities and kind of re-energize the Spartan spirit. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have the district PTA report. Naeem Moore.
Sorry, buddy. Good evening, everyone. As always, thanks for having us. For those of you who don't know who we are, my name is Frederick Murray. This is Naeem Moore, and we are the co-presidents of Springfield Township's ENFIELD ERDENHEIM Home and School Partnership, or as we famously call it, the EHSP. And we both have children in both elementary schools. This is our second term our second year as co-presidents, and we're looking forward to a busy yet fun and successful school year. So,
yeah, we got a lot of stuff planned for this year. Starting off, we have our biggest fall event, which is we started last year was Spartan Fest, which is a night where we have games, music, and food trucks. So Spartan Fest is going to take place on October 8th in the parking lot of the high school, and we will have the music is going to come from actually from the high school. We're getting the bands from Mr. Puntel, and we're going to set that up, and we're going to have different games like last year. But to make it a little bit better than last year, we're having the Harlem Wizards game. So the Harlem Wizards is going to take place in the high school gym. And this is, again, both is open up to the community, so tickets are on sale right now. You can go to our website, which is the eehsp.org, and you'll see information on that. So it's an exciting game. It's basically kind of like the Harlem Globetrotters, but it's the Harlem Wizards, which they're just as entertaining. The spin on it is that the teachers from the district actually get to play against the Harlem Wizards. Looking at the list that we have, I think we're getting close to 20 teachers so far, teachers and administrators and staff. So Mr. Bearclaw, Mr. McLaurin, Mr. Okawa. This is a new name, Mrs. Stephanie. I think she just got married. Stephanie. Mr. and Mrs. Miller. Miss Keys, our infield principal, Mrs. Van Voren. Elementary teacher, Mrs. Van Zanten. Glazer. We got confirmed the other day, Dr. Rittenhouse.
I was excellent when I was 17. I'm really good now that I'm 52.
So the list goes on, and I'm about to post the list for everybody so they can get excited. We hope that all of the teachers and staff can continue to get the kids, the students pumped up to come. But other than that, that's our big 2 events that's coming up on October 8th. The game starts at 6:30, and it'll last till 6:30 to 8:30. So there'll be fun. It'll be fun food, raffles. It's going to be a big day. So that's about it until.
Are you accepting cheerleaders?
So you know what? I should have said our new principal, Mrs. Van Voren, is going to be the referee, and I don't have it written down here, but we do have one person that's coming to be a cheerleader. So I'm trying to recruit other cheerleaders as well.
Do you still have my pom-poms and my costume, thanks to Mrs. Buckley?
So I will be looking for some cheerleaders as well. Any questions on the event or any other events? I'm excited.
I'm sorry, is there a charge for the game?
So yeah, so you have to buy tickets for the event if you're going to be a spectator. It's $10 for students up front and $12 for adults up front. Then there's also a ticket price for a courtside seat. So basically, the students who want to be, courtside to see their teacher, it's $25. Sorry, it's $25 for that ticket, and it goes up if you buy it the day of the event. So it goes up $5 for each ticket. So again, you can check out their website, eehsp.org, for more information and to buy tickets. All right, thanks.
So, good. There you go. Let's go.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Moving on to reports of committees. Finance Committee, Walter Lapidus.
How do I follow the wizards? I don't. So we had the Finance Committee meeting last Tuesday, the 13th of September. We talked extensively about, Mr. King's casual dress, but no, about 3 topics. As you'll find out fairly shortly, we are about to embark on a major project, and we discussed whether or not we need to issue a bond in order to finance the beginning parts of the project. I believe the committee asked for additional information from Mr. King, which he's working on preparing or has already prepared. Either or qualifies, right? Already prepared, okay. Item number 2, we discussed the TC, I'm not pronouncing it correct, is it TC? Track development, which if it happens and once it happens, should add a significant dollar amount to our tax revenue and should help us out in the future. And third, we reviewed our fund balance and talked about whether or not we needed to transfer money. I believe that was one of the discussions. And we ended as friends. And I don't think we've set a date for the next meeting, but that's coming up shortly. Are there any questions? No? Okay.
Next will be the Property Committee report, which I will give. We had a Property Committee meeting on Friday, September 16th. At that time, we discussed our construction projects. We did an overview of the timeline, touched base about the Plan-Con process, talked about land development process and funding, and we talked about some next steps, such as developing some committees, and we also talked about the first phase of the high school renovation project. I'm not going to go into detail on these. We do have Schrader Group here with us tonight, and they'll be presenting, so I don't want to steal their thunder by giving too much away. We also got an update on the summer projects. Most of the big projects from the summer are wrapping up. Just a few little details they're still working on. And we also talked about the administrative HVAC replacement project. You will see that there is a $15,000 credit back from the contractor for failure to fulfill contractual obligations that we will be voting on this evening. And that is it. Does anyone have any questions?
Just with regard to the failure to fulfill the contract obligations, what was the agreement? Like, how has that affected the project, and is it completed?
We were fortunate that we were able to get another contractor in to finish the work and to, continue doing what needed to be done.
Okay, great, thanks.
So next, we'll move on to the administrative report. Dr. Nancy Hacker.
So unfortunately, yesterday, it was with great sadness that we learned that one of our former high school teachers who retired just a few years ago, Mr. Len Arlen, passed away after a very brief bout with cancer. Len's wife, Casey, also worked for us. She worked as a technology and library assistant in our library. When Len retired, Casey retired along with him. The two of them had purchased a home in Florida because Casey herself had had some health issues. And unfortunately, Len's diagnosis and his passing really occurred within a very short period of time. So he was a valued member of the high school staff for 16 years. He taught social studies here at the high school. He had many friends on the faculty, inspired many, many students. So of course, it's only fitting that we remember Len this evening and wish our deepest condolences and sympathies to Casey Arlen and the rest of Len's family. So I just wanted to make that unfortunate announcement. As Gretchen mentioned, we do have David Schrader here tonight from the Schrader Group, but we thought before we talk about the process involved and the timelines involved for the proposed projects, I would do a little brief update in terms of how we got started and onto this journey so that people have an understanding of the rationale behind these projects. I'm very happy to see that we do have what for us is really a packed house this evening, that we have many people who were willing to come out. Normally, this is more people in the audience than we have over the course of 12 months. So thank you all for showing up and for your interest. And as Gretchen mentioned, we will be having future meetings where we will invite the community to come out to offer their perspectives, to ask questions, and so forth. But tonight is really a briefer overview that we'd like to present.
So we actually began this project with a significant amount of investigation into what is it that we need in our district. And a few years ago, we commissioned from actually the Montgomery County Planning Commission an enrollment study because we saw that our numbers in the district were starting to increase. And whenever numbers begin to increase in the district, what that creates is a definitive need for not just new facilities, but renovations of existing facilities, a need for more classroom space, a need for more teachers. It has widespread implications. So what we wanted to know, and the reason behind commissioning the study was this a trend? Was this just a blip that we were going to be experiencing for a few years? Or was it something that we could anticipate would continue over a long period of time? So after our demographic study, which I'm going to show you some of the results from in the presentation, we also did a feasibility study. We commissioned an architectural firm, happened to be Gilbert Architects, who also did our cafeteria expansion at the ERDENHEIM Elementary School, And what Gilbert did was they had several meetings with all of our administrators. They walked all of our properties at each of our buildings. They looked at the infrastructure in all of our schools. They looked at our fields. They looked at the configuration of all of our properties. And what they did through this feasibility study was provide recommendations to us about what needed to be improved, replaced, fixed, or whatever. So the feasibility study was actually fairly extensive. Gilbert came to our board meeting, they presented, we put the results of the feasibility study up on the website for the community to see. And what became very apparent was that there were two primary needs, one at the high school, the other at the elementary level. So that's what I'm going to review with you, and I'm focusing on the high school first. Board members, I apologize if my back or my shoulder is to you, as I'm really speaking more to the audience this evening. You guys are certainly all familiar with all of this. So phase one, and you heard an allusion to our discussion in the Finance Committee meeting about the funding phasing in the project, and we're not going to delve really into the funding right away unless there are specific questions. But one of the first things we talked about was our fields and our tracks and our athletic facilities. And one of the things that has come up from many conversations at the high school level with Mr. Payne, Dr. Rittenhouse, our coaches, and so forth, our phys ed teachers, is we do not have what many other high schools, in fact, the majority of high schools in Montgomery County and the surrounding counties have, and that's turf playing fields. And when you don't have turf, you are at a significant disadvantage in terms of what other teams have that you do not have. There's a loss of practice time and playing time, which translates very quickly into a loss of a competitive edge. If you can't go out there and practice, but all the teams in the county who you play against are out there practicing because they can get onto a turf field after it rains or after it snows, we cannot do that. And we certainly saw that yesterday when, unfortunately, we had to cancel many of our games. The kids can't go out there and practice even after the rain stops because of wet grass and mud. They can go out, however, on a turf field. So those are some pretty significant issues. We talked about the wear and tear, and we certainly have experienced that, as Mr. Thorne can attest. This summer, we've actually had to ask our community soccer league to go somewhere else for their practices because our fields are dry as a bone. Yesterday was one of the few days of rain, and what happens is when we don't have good fields for the kids to play on, it ruins the playing surfaces and actually is very dangerous for them. Field hockey is a significant example. Our field hockey field currently slopes towards one end of the field, which is a tremendous disadvantage for the girls as they're playing. The grass becomes brittle and sharp and actually dangerous when the kids fall on grass fields, much more dangerous than the turf. And of course, the hardness of the level of the playing field also becomes a significant issue. So for our physical education classes, all of our athletic teams, and the community teams as well that play soccer and other sports, there's tremendous wear and tear on the grass fields that we have already. So we do have, in addition to that, a need for more fields. What we're finding is we just don't have enough field space. So one of the things that came out of this first phase that we were looking at is how can we capture more field space? And we're going to kind of walk our way into that in a moment. And then, of course, what we look at in addition, even though there's always an expense when you are replacing or renovating or fixing or whatever, the expense is offset to some extent because we lose the upkeep costs that we currently have. Maintaining all of our current fields is extraordinarily expensive, whether it's cutting the grass, fertilizing, lining, whatever. You don't have that with turf. You get a fairly significantly long life out of those fields, and you don't have the maintenance costs. So there is a return on that initial expenditure. The other area that it became apparent where we really suffer is by having only one gym. at our high school. We have another gym at the middle school, but the middle school uses that gym. We have other gyms at each of our other schools, but we have plenty of community events and athletics that take place in those gyms as well. Enfield, as an example, is used all of the time. We need desperately to have another gym. And as Mr. Payne pointed out, when we do have inclement weather days and the coaches still want to have some level of practice to keep the kids in shape and to keep them moving, we have as many as 6 teams that are indoors at the same time that may be all vying for the same space. So we may have to start immediately after school and literally go well into the evening all night long in terms of constantly turning over the period of time when those kids can practice. And of course, we have to limit the amount of time that they can practice because we have to fit so many of them in on a rotating schedule. We also have inadequate and outdated locker room and toilet facilities in that area, so we would be looking to update those facilities as well, both for visiting teams as well as our own. And of course, we have kind of a confusing entrance and layout. When you walk into a lot of high school gym areas, you walk into a lobby that's a showcase for the athletics. There's a Hall of Fame, there's recognition of student athletes, there's a trophy area, and so forth. When you walk into our area, we miss all of that, and it's hard to tell where things are located. And I will tell you, when I first came to the school district, it took me a long time to figure out where's the pool, where's the concession stand, how do I get into the gym, how do I make my way around here? It's a very confusing configuration that we have based on when it was originally built. And of course, now that we have more kids who are interested in physical fitness, not only because they need to bulk up and practice in order to be able to be better athletes, we have a number of kids because we promote good nutrition, we promote physical activity and physical fitness, more and more kids who want to use an adequate fitness center, which currently ours is very small and really doesn't accommodate the need that we have for all of the kids. Another issue that came up in the feasibility study that was recommended is the fact that there is a lack of an identifiable entrance location into the high school. When you pull into the main driveway, and you'll see this on one of my slides, it's hard to tell where the main entrance of our high school is. In fact, again, when I first came to the school district, I thought the gym entrance was the main entrance into the high school. We also have that terrible, confusing circle that leads to nowhere. You can go round and round and round in the circle. And what we have come to learn over time is it's also very dangerous because people coming down Springfield Way, even though they're supposed to stop before they either go around the circle or turn left into the drive, often don't do that. So there's confusion with the people coming down the drive off of Paper Mill Road and getting ready to enter the circle and people coming in from Springfield Way. So it's a very, very difficult internal kind of configuration, but worse, because of our location, it's extraordinarily dangerous for cars to either pull into that location by making a left-hand turn off of Paper Mill Road into the high school. There's no light there, there's no stop sign, and people coming off of 309 they are generally not gracious and don't often stop. So it becomes very, very difficult. Traffic backs up on Paper Mill Road. And similarly, if you've ever tried at a busy time of the day to make a left-hand turn out of our driveway onto Paper Mill Road going down towards 309, you can be stuck there forever. You kind of have to inch out and hope that somebody coming from down Paper Mill Road is going to be really nice and let you in. So one of the biggest issues that we have is our proximity to 309. And one thing that I really want to point out that's really important, the people who are driving in and out of the high school are not just people like myself who started driving a lot of years ago. They are our students, our kids, the ones who just got their driver's licenses or have only been driving for 1, 2, or 3 years, and may not have the same level of wherewithal in terms of when it's appropriate to make that turn and to go out into the oncoming traffic. So it's a huge concern for us. Last year, we actually had an accident with a student and one of our bus drivers turning into that driveway. So that's a real concern. And then finally, of course, we only have one-way traffic flow around the back of the building, and that's Springfield Way. You cannot get around the back of our building currently. If you go around the circle, go back behind the main entrance, you get stuck in Never Never Land back there. Another mistake I made, I think it was my first board meeting when I came, I didn't realize you couldn't continue around the back. So we have a number of issues with the way our drives are configured. So this is our current high school site, and it's a little bit difficult to see, but here's 309, and here's the driveway leading into the high school, which I just spoke of. And as you can see, it's a really small distance between when the cars come off the ramp here and turn in. So there's traffic that's continually coming back and forth. And then, of course, you know, as you come into the complex, you don't come anywhere near the main entrance. You can't see it. It's actually blocked by this area of the gym, but the main entrance is actually over here. So it's a little hard to see in the drawing, but let me point out that this is not working. I'm looking for Rich. Did I break it? Anything is possible. So the blue arrow, while you play with that, is 309. And the red dot is where our current driveway is. And one of the things, thank you, he's the man. I may need you back again. I'm trying. What did you do that it... Is it on there? Oh, there it is. Okay, thank you. So, yeah, you're right. So that red dot is our current driveway. One of the things that we are talking about to ease the flow is to move that driveway down close to where the location of the stadium is, create a new drive that would actually lead into the property and then lead into parking over here, more centrally located on the property itself, and that would be directly leading into the entrance of the high school. So there would no longer be any confusion about where the entrance is. In addition, we could take back some of the space and put in a new field where we have current parking, in addition to space over here for a field, along with leaving the current location. So that's one of the ideas that we are looking at in terms of reconfiguring. The plans are not finalized yet, but obviously that's a goal, is to figure out how can we reconfigure that space. So the second aspect of the project after the high school is a proposed brand new elementary school. And we have many, many reasons as well for this idea. First of all, our current building at Enfield is over 68 years old. In general, the useful life of a building can be anywhere from around 35 years to about 50 maximum. So obviously we've exceeded that. We're talking about 1948, before probably anybody in this room was born. Obviously, our internal mechanical systems are not current. They're not modern, although they are working. We can't say they're working really, really great. They're sufficing. They need upgrades right now. So again, you know, to invest in those systems, it seems like it's throwing good money after bad. We need new HVAC. We need a new boiler. We need new hot water heaters, new plumbing, tremendous number of upgrades there that would cost us in the millions of dollars if we were to invest in those. We need a new roof for the entire building, along with significant repairs to the outside masonry. That's the brickwork, and all the pointing in the brickwork needs to be done. We did a little bit of that about 4 years ago. There's a significant amount that still needs to be done. Internal security for the building, again, it's an old building. It wasn't built with new security measures that we have in other buildings. We have a vestibule that once you're inside that vestibule, you can pretty much get anywhere in the building. There's no cutoff. What we see in a lot of the new elementary schools is even if you come into a lobby or a vestibule, you cannot get into the rest of the school building at all. In fact, you can't even get into the main office unless you're buzzed in. When you come into our current building in Enfield, once you get past the double doors, you can walk into the office or anywhere else in the building. We have very poor security downstairs also. It's very difficult to see people coming in from the courtyard into that area. We have numerous issues when we have community basketball games at night. Those doors are left open all the time. So a number of the community teams that come in, once they're done playing, they forget that the doors have to be closed, the lights have to be turned out. We often walk in many mornings and find those doors have been left open. It's a huge security risk, but we have no alternative way of locking down the rest of the building at this point. We're going to talk in a minute. I'll show you figures on expanding enrollment. Currently at Enfield, we really have no more classroom space to absorb additional classes, and you're going to see our enrollments continue to rise. When we looked at the cost to actually retrofit the entire building, to try to make a newer building, redo the shell of the building, redo the interior spaces, get that new roof, repair the infrastructure issues and the mechanical issues. When we looked at all of those costs, along with fees for all of the companies that would be involved in planning for all of that, the cost of all of those repairs, retrofits, and upgrades was nearly identical to the estimated cost of a brand new school. So that kind of became a no-brainer when we looked at costs of $23 million for repairs to a 1948 building compared to, again, a $26 million cost for a new elementary school. And that's when we started talking about a new school in earnest. The current site that we are looking at for the construction of a new elementary school is where the Antonelli School of Photography is currently located. It's down on Montgomery Avenue across from our bus depot. That current building is in extensive need of repair. So even though Antonelli pays us a rental fee every year, which is additional revenue for us, we've already explored the cost of a new roof, which is absolutely necessary down at that site. That would cost well over $1 million just for the new roof to repair the Antonelli site. We only get a fraction of that in terms of rent from them, and we'd have to do significant upgrades to that property as well, which we don't believe is cost effective. The Enfield site, even if we thought more seriously about retrofitting that building, the site itself has significant concerns for us because of its size and its location. Church Road and Paper Mill Road is one of the most horrendous intersections. It's extraordinarily dangerous because it's kind of a 5 points construction. You have a number of different avenues that are feeding into that. It's very dangerous, even though there's a crossing guard, but when that guard is not there, it's a very problematic site for walkers coming in, even for the drivers. We have, as you will see in a photo, a very limited driveway area around the building. And as many of you are aware, kindergarten and first grade parents really like to pick up or drop off their little babies. So we get a lot of parents who come on to the site who want to be dropping their children off or who want to be picking them up for various reasons. And what ends up happening is because the site is so small, the cars back up onto Church Road, which creates a nightmare for the traffic and makes the police really angry with all of you who are doing that, and of course, all of us. We have had situations occur where the police have said we're going to be ticketing all those people backing up on Church Road, which has not created a very happy environment for those parents. They have no choice. There's no other place for them to go because the buses, as number 3 says, are lined up all up and down Paper Mill Road because there's no place for those buses to go. The circular parking lot that we have only fits a few buses. The rest of them have to wait. They have to line up all up and down Paper Mill Road, and that's very hazardous for the traffic that's there. And finally, the playground area. We have a very limited play area, actually, in terms of fields there because of extraordinary flooding concerns that we have on that site. So this kind of shows you the yellow arrows, the traffic flow that I was talking about with the parents. They come here off of Church Road. There's a little driveway that comes down the back of the school right next to one of the playgrounds where the children actually are playing, and we have the parents driving down. This is the back of the gym. They turn around here at the gym and can drop off their children there at that location. They circle back around this narrow space, again next to the playgrounds where children might be playing, and then they exit out onto Paper Mill if they're able, because again, the buses are backed all the way up and down Paper Mill Road. So it becomes a nightmare early in the morning and in the afternoon at pickup time as well, and also when we have special events at the school, because there is very limited parking on the site. So let me talk for a moment about size and enrollment concerns. What we learned through the feasibility study is that the Pennsylvania Department of Education has specific requirements for how many students can occupy a building. They call it functional capacity. At this point, Enfield and Erdenheim have either already exceeded or are near functional capacity. Erdenheim has exceeded functional capacity. Relatively new school that was built, it's already above where the state's recommended capacity is. And that's because of our expanding populations. So obviously one of our ideas is let's pull a grade out of that school in order to reduce the number of students. I'm going to show you a chart to show you the increases in population at each school as well as across the district. We really have no room for expansion at either one of those two schools, so we're kind of stuck right now in terms of classrooms. So these are the enrollment projections over time. And as you can see, we are in the, it's a little hard to see here, the 2016-2017 school year. This was actually done when we commissioned the demographic study by the Montgomery County Planning Commission, and they're almost exactly on target with what they projected, and their study was done a couple of years ago, our student population to be. They're about off by about 25 kids. We have about 2450 right now. And as you can see all the way up through the year 2023, 24, our population is going to either continue to grow or remain at these very, very high levels, capping off at about 2507 for next year. By 2023, 24, it's at a similar range. And then if you look back to the statistics of where we were 11 years ago, we were at about 2,000 students. So here we are, and we kind of show by grade levels. The blue on the bottom shows increasing enrollments from Enfield, or actually our K-1 schools, because keep in mind, our grade configuration per school was different. So we just did this by grade levels, not by school. And you can see K-1 continues to grow, 2 through 5 continues to grow, and this is actually 2 years behind. Middle school continues to grow, and they keep on going. And the high school has remained fairly flat because the high school hasn't yet experienced the effects of the children coming through in the 3 other schools, but they will. So it's a little hard to see, but this starts out in the 2007-2008 school year, 11 years ago. As you can see, Enfield had 333 students. We currently have 416 in the 2 grades. And I say Enfield, but again, keep in mind, it was a different school configuration. But I'm looking at the 2 grades, total kindergarten, total first. It's grown by 25% in a decade. ERDENHEIM, similar grade configurations as it is now, 2 through 5, had close to 600 children. It now has over 800 children. So that building has already become obsolete in terms of size and capacity. It's grown by a third, 36%. The middle school, and the middle school will continue to feel these effects because as these children currently in 5th grade and 4th grade with numbers in the 200s, they'll be replacing the children in 7 and 8 where the numbers are in the 180s. So everything's continuing to move on up. We've seen a swelling in the middle school of 21%, 456 11 years ago to a current 553 children in 6, 7, and 8. And then, of course, the high school, as I stated before, was flat and has remained so. So a lot of people say, well, it's underutilized. Why don't you use those classrooms? Because in a couple of years, all of the flow from the increasing sizes of the middle school and the other schools will flow on up to the high school as we continue to increase our population. So again, here we are, 2060 was our population 11 years ago, and we're now close to 2450. And the reason we say we've only increased by 19% is because when you average out all of these, the flat expansion of the high school, which is not notable at all, factors into that. But when you look at the numbers for Enfield, ERDENHEIM, and middle school, you see how much their populations are growing and where the need really is in terms of enrollment. So as you can see, this is the current configuration for Enfield School. We have our 1st grade and kindergarten classrooms. Some of them are down the hallway, and there really are no other full-size classrooms other than this one here, which we currently use as a reading center for children who are pulled out for additional reading support, which is absolutely critical in kindergarten and 1st grade, where we want to make sure they're reading on level. So for those children who need more intensive support, this is where they come and meet with our reading specialist. And then we even have downstairs below that, there we are, some special education classrooms downstairs, our gym, our cafeteria, our music room, and then, of course, our mechanical systems. So again, we really have no additional space in that school to accommodate any of our growing population. Here at ERDENHEIM, when you kind of look at where the classrooms are, it becomes a stark reality as well. As you can see, these are all currently used classrooms. There are no additional ones that we have. We've actually taken back some of the space. When the school was designed, it was designed so that we had what's called small group instructional space or large group instructional space outside the current classrooms. We've actually put walls around some of that space and moved some of our specialists, such as our reading specialist and our RTI, our response to intervention specialist, into those what are now small group instruction spaces. So the original intent in the building is starting to disappear in terms of having those team meeting places for students, because we're in such desperate need of space already. And of course, you're all very much aware that the cafeteria, of course, was built too small to accommodate the current numbers that we have. So of course, we had to do a cafeteria addition as well. So this is the current Antonelli site that I talked to you about before that has the old Penn Manor Elementary School location on it. And as you can see, it's down Paper Mill Road, and there's an intersection here with Montgomery Avenue. Our bus depot is across the street. There would be space on this site for us to house buses so that we can free up some parking space at the middle school. the buses right now that we have to park to get out of the flood water that's down there, and also for additional space, we can recapture some of that parking space. It's a huge issue. We just had back to school night at the middle school, and people were parked all the way up and down Paper Mill and Bergen and Melinda, and it's very problematic for the community as well. So what we would do is we would create an entrance off of Paper Mill coming in so that people could access the site. And then, of course, we would position the school, and this is one of the things Dave's going to talk about, in such a way as to really capture the lighting and the sun in favorable conditions for us. So that's the proposed new site for a new K-2 school. By pulling the second grade out of Erdenheim, we free up a significant amount of space, far less children, and we put them into what we would actually term a primary learning center or a primary literacy center on this location. So this is a sketch actually that was done in our feasibility study, not by our Schrader group, our current architects who were selected with great care, but in the original plans as envisioned by Gilbert Architects. So this is not necessarily what our new plans will end up looking like. Whatever it ends up looking like will be the result of significant community as well as staff input. That's part of the process we're going to be talking about, is how do we capture the involvement of the community in all of these phases of construction. But it gives you an idea of what that site will look like, and you can probably see there's much more parking, both behind the building, for parent egress, for bus egress, and so forth, as well as fields on that site that we will still maintain. Once we move into that site, the current ENFIELD school will be demolished. There's a possibility we could retain the newer section of the building that has the library and the gym for community use, but we would take the remaining parts of that property and turn it into more fields, which we desperately need. The middle school kids could certainly walk down and use those fields. And this shows that ENFIELD site, how we could possibly reconfigure that current site to incorporate many more fields there and really, again, take back some of that space for the current needs that we have for many of our athletic teams. So that's really what we are looking at, what we've been talking about over the course of the past several years. I'm going to turn it over to Dave, who's really going to talk in a little bit more detail about the process that we're going to be unveiling that will incorporate community input, questions, and so forth, as well as our timelines.
Good. I'll have to learn your machine here.
It's just that.
Okay.
So they tell me that is,
And then right and left?
the right hand
Good.
moves it forward.
Thank you.
So I'm going to sit over here.
And I will. So many of you have not met me. Members of the board have. So I'd like to express on behalf of our firm thanks for having the confidence in us to carry your project through. And we look forward to participation from all of you folks. So that's what this is about. And I hope that you enjoyed what you just saw. The detail of that is from years of thinking and years of experience that have come along for the district. I'm going to show you the big picture because it's your job actually to now dig down into the weeds and get into a project with us. So part of what our job is, so we're going to talk just quickly about where we're going to try to guide you and take you, and then process and timeline. So when we came and interviewed, we talked about what's out there from a teaching and learning trend. This seemed to parallel quite a bit where your district is going with some of the ideas that we see out there. That turns into facility trends. It turns into how those buildings start to match what it is that you're doing with all of your educational thought. And not your project, but one of the ones that we're doing in Phoenixville is a K-2 early learning center structure. And in that case, I'm sorry, this part's K-1. There's a 2, 3, 4, 5 on the left-hand side of this. But their thought process was that the building itself, as soon as you enter, becomes the literacy experience. And so some of those ideas paralleled some of the thoughts of your board. This is not what your building will look like, but certainly we'll start to show you the ideas of what is out there to take your project to the next level. different ways of learning in these schools, different ways of creating large group spaces that tie back and forth to the educational structure and to the literacy portion of the building. And so a lot of these ideas seem to parallel some of the things that your administration and board are starting to think about. Now, I'm showing you these only because this is what we did to try to generate the images for another district to understand where they might be going with their ideas. And currently that project is probably about 60 to 70% complete. You can see the exterior of that going up in Phoenixville. That happens to be the entry side off of Route 29. Or Pothouse Road, and then the back side from the actual middle school and high school campus is beginning to look like that back towards Pothouse Road. So it's our hope that in a year and a half or 2 years, depending on how the process goes, you too can be looking at your project in a similar way. So it's kind of exciting to see how these projects generate and how the ideas come from them. Additionally, we'll be looking with you at your athletic components in the high school. These are just a couple of local high schools that we've worked on, trying to give you a sense. Although these are main gyms, you'll be talking about auxiliary gyms, the site, and all of the athletic complex that goes along with that. These are the kinds of things that we'll entertain with you to try to show you what's out there as well. But we never do that in a vacuum. Those are different districts that we've worked with. The goal is to try to create a process that is very inclusive, and we hope that that's part of the reason why our firm appealed to the district. The process, as we see it, with the 3 projects that we're talking about, and I'm going to vary my thought process a little bit. You folks are already looking at the Antonelli site as Enfield. I look at Enfield as a 3rd project in many ways, just like Dr. Hacker was talking about earlier. So we'll talk about those 3 pieces. There are, as we get into the process, 2 main groups that I think we want to create here, and we're going to be meeting with administration tomorrow to try to set these up. Group 1 is a planning team, and there will be a planning team for the high school and a planning team for the elementary level. That will be made up of the folks who will be on the ground with us working day in and day out on making sure the project happens. Their responsibility is to make the project move along and to make the decisions that have to go from there. Larger group, though, is going to be a workshop committee, and we'd like to figure out how to structure that tomorrow. I think we'll spend a little bit of time on that. The goal there is to get as many of the community's ideas and the administrations and the students and the faculty and so on of what we really need to do on these projects. Now, I know that there's a little bit more fixed thought process about what might go on in the high school, but right now, for the elementary building, although you saw a sketch there, the world is your oyster. We can think about what education means to you next, and we can think about what kind of walls you want to wrap that education in. So that's our job with you, is to try to come up with that. So the workshop committee is going to be made up of a very high-level group who gets to think about the big pictures for the district and the next generation here. That second group, the workshop committee, when we've done this in the past, and you're seeing another Montgomery County school district there, it's Upper Merion School District, where we went through an entire master planning process, and now we're doing a couple of elementaries for them. That was made up of a variety of school board members, the district administration, the building administrations, and I should have gone community members, then students, because it's great fun to have the students show us what they think the next generation of learning is. And they know more than we do in many cases. So those are the kinds of organized meetings that we'll have. We'll then get down into the weeds here and start to talk about concepts. And these are not architects. These are the folks from the district actually working on the design, and that happens to be a teacher pointing, not one of the architects from our office, or an administrator, pardon me. So we're going to get you folks into this as much as we can, working back and forth on concepts, on big picture visioning, and then we'll get down into the weeds of design. So there are kids working on the design in one of our design workshops, and these are the kinds of things that we'll try to work through with you folks. Just if I have one picture of kids, I have to have 2. It's great stuff. But we'll work back and forth on the programming, and when we start to talk about programming, that means the size of the spaces, the quantity of spaces, and so on that you need in the building, and we'll set it up so that we can create some concept plans with that larger group committee. Those concept plans turn into sketch plans. That is a mixture of an architect's handwriting and the administrators and teachers and students' handwriting. That will turn into building program diagrams, which will turn into floor plans, which will start to show how they relate vertically and eventually turn into a site plan. And I guess the one thing I have to add here is these sketches might look similar to the sketches you showed from Gilbert, only in the way that the hand looks, the sketching lines. That's because we have the same engineers on as came up with those concepts for your master plan. So you'll see the same guys working on this that worked on your original concepts. But anyway, that's how we'll turn that into a project. So I show you that because I wanted you to see how the process works. You will be involved. You will help us make decisions. So timeline, this is very, very high level. We are at the very preliminary stages of understanding what this means. You heard about the high school. You heard about 2 phases. Not only is it important to get the stadium and some kind of turf field going for many of the reasons that Dr. Hacker brought up, but also because if you get that in place early, that allows you to open the rest of the site up and move your sports onto that field and use that thing very heavily while we stage the rest of the construction on a phase 2 portion of the site. So if indeed the stadium is a critical element here, that in our minds would become a phase 1 project. You're going to see a schedule for each of the project types, and you'll see 3 major elements. There's the design process, which parallels municipal approvals. Municipalities include your township, includes the county conservation district, and it also includes the state approvals. That many times not only takes as long as the design process, but often takes more time than the design process. So we have to be very cognizant of how that process is moving. So for that early phase, we could see the design process moving fairly quickly, probably the approvals moving quickly too. Our hope, if we can do this, is to get you out to bid sometime in the spring so that that field could actually be worked on next summer. If that were the case, if it works, that sets you up so that you can move ahead with phase 2 starting in the fall. Again, everything is going to be contingent upon how our approvals work with the township and other approval agencies. Phase 2 would be the athletic areas, which it's not just an addition, it's the renovation of parts of your facility as well, playing fields and parking. And probably the sketches that Dr. Hacker showed you will give you a little better sense of what goes on in this side of the site, but you can see the general outline of the areas that would be affected by this. Again, that would be a project that would stretch in design and approval through 2017 towards the end of it, which would allow you to potentially bid in the fall. Again, it all depends on how we can move along with approvals, and then construction could potentially happen through August of 2018, allowing you to move back into the building, and I shouldn't say move back into, but come back to the building with most of the site work done in August of 2018. One of the things that we'll have to talk about here is how you handle seeding, how you handle new growth on the fields, and when those fields are actually available to you. That's one of those big challenges that we'll have to get into as we really talk about that. And one of the things we should probably talk about as part of a workshop. So that's the high school. The new facility on the Antonelli site is a little bit more clean in terms of the process, but again, the design process will be a bit more engaged because we're trying to really dream and determine what this facility might be. So we see that being approximately a year process, design moving from hopefully now through the fall of next year. Same thing for the approvals, which would allow you to bid in early 2018. The construction, again, if everything works out, the construction in a 14-month project like that would get you into that building in August of 2019. So all of these are plans. They're certainly not written in stone, and they're going to take an awful lot more work to hatch. So we'll keep you apprised of how that process is moving. And certainly last but not least is whatever Enfield site ends up being, whether it's a combination of building plus playing fields or all playing fields or whatever. Right now, that's really up in the air. What it would do is it would follow movement out of that building onto the Antonelli site, which then frees us up and lets us do what we're going to do next. So that's why the big question mark, because everything else ahead of that needs to be in place before we can make all of that happen. So that's really kind of a very high-level discussion of what might happen here in the next couple of years. It's a very exciting process. We're thrilled for you for moving along with some of these ideas, and we look forward to helping to guide you through that. So I think we're both here for questions.
Opening it up to questions for either one of us. Dorothea?
From 2:30 in the afternoon with buses from Philmont, all the way back up Bethlehem Pike, way past the Springfield residences. If you're going to move the schooler to the Antonelli site, how are you going to handle the one-lane traffic that if people come out of the Antonelli site, need to turn left on Paper Mill Road? It would be virtually impossible for the people coming down Paper Mill and the people coming up the other way to get the Freedom Line. So now you've got this constant, and where we are, we would be totally landlocked. We would not be able to get out of our area. So how is that going to phase into, Montgomery Avenue, you have SEPTA buses, as you know. You've got the buses across the street in the yard. You've got Cisco Park people. You've got all this going on. And now you have Philmont funneling out as well. How do you handle all of that traffic flow?
Would you like some help? I can help with that.
We have talked about that.
So we haven't necessarily had the conversations completely, but what I will tell you about a project like this is that what happens is it becomes under intense scrutiny from a traffic perspective. And there are 3 entities who are going to be working on that. PennDOT District 6 is the first one because that is a PennDOT roadway. They'll use all of their traffic engineering to try to set up an appropriate traffic flow through there. Second is going to be the municipality has their own traffic engineers, and the municipality has traffic engineers who are supposed to be working back and forth with PennDOT's District 6. The third part of that is we have to hire traffic engineers. So there's 3 sets of traffic engineers working on how to recreate the flow through the area, time it appropriately so that you have all of the access points working, and then what will probably end up happening, Dr. Hacker is alluding to here, is you will end up probably with some traffic light discussions along there and probably some kind of timing issues that go along with that. My experience in the past watching this, not a traffic engineer, an architect going through the process on many of these buildings, is that the buses are not the issue. It's the parent drop-off and pickup. And so we have, one of the big things that we're going to do, and one of the things that you saw in that sketch site plan, is we're going to get all of that traffic onto the site. The goal is to make sure that we contain all of those cars on the site, and we find a clean way to get them off of that site without affecting all of those intersections. So at this point, without having gone through the traffic studies, I would say stay tuned.
But we're aware.
Yeah,
We're aware of
because,
those
I sat on Hillcrest for 20 minutes today
Yes.
trying to get home. Yes. The buses rolling over Philmont. It's crazy.
Gretchen.
That 2:30 in the afternoon that you have that issue?
Buses start lining up on Hillcrest at 2 o'clock in the afternoon,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't finish until 3. And then there are obviously other things, like today was an intramural game, so now we had 6 other buses from other schools that came. So now we are totally landlocked because of the Philmont buses. And then we have the parents, then we have the pickups. I mean, it's insane. Luckily, we have a private driveway. We just need to get there.
We just need to encourage those Philmont kids to switch over and come to our high school instead.
Our elementary schools are on a different timing also. They get out a little later.
And we would probably look at that too to see what the
Right.
time
the
is. Bob, you had a
exit
question?
time.
Yeah, part of that issue is that all of that traffic coming out of Philmont makes a left-hand turn for the most part on the Paper Mill Road, which further confuses the issue.
But that's great to know what those issues are and for us to perhaps go down there and see what the conditions are.
Because, Hillcrest is one way and Mills Mill is one way. There are 11 signs not to turn in there, but people decide they want to because they're special. So, yeah, you have most of the buses are feeding on a left-hand turn to Paper Mill.
That's good to know.
And they can't
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Question about the maintenance of the buildings currently, and where our plan is, because this obviously isn't going to take place for a certain amount of time, because obviously everything takes time. But we have some current maintenance issues in some of the buildings that we've talked about, especially I've seen it at Enfield, actually some in ERDENHEIM, surprisingly, it being a new building. What are our plans of keeping the maintenance up, the painting, the landscaping, the things that, you can see with the naked eye, making sure that the schools still look really presentable until we actually get on this venture?
Thank you for bringing that up, Lacey. So I'm going to give you the overall, we will not let it go and ignore it for the next 4 years, but I'm going to ask Craig to talk more specifically. Craig Thorne is our Director of Facilities and Grounds, about our long-range plan and how each year we actually put specific projects on tap. We always start with our priorities, with safety issues first before the aesthetics, although every year we do aesthetics as well. And we try to do them over the holidays when the kids aren't here. We try to do them in the summer and so forth. But I'm going to let Craig talk about that more specifically.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up as well. As you're aware, you go by all the facilities. We take great pride in our facilities and maintaining them. I really appreciate community response and calling me and saying, hey, the bushes aren't trimmed, the paint looks shabby, because we take that to heart in our department. And if you ever did call in with any type of issue, you would see immediate response. Right, yeah. So you've seen the response. I don't know if the bushes have been trimmed, the basketball areas, the windows have been painted. You've seen the guy on the bucket truck.
Yes.
So yeah.
We have noticed a couple things, and I know it definitely is the beginning of the school year. I know that things are definitely a little busy right now, and I hear
Right,
you.
right.
But it's something obviously that we take huge pride. I mean, I grew up in this district, decided to raise my kids back here, take a huge pride in wanting to have them in a building that has them
Absolutely.
look and be as successful as we want them to be. So
Absolutely.
it's important.
Yeah. So we do take great pride in that as well. And it's very important to our department and the grounds guys and all the maintenance folks. We do operate on a 5-year maintenance plan that we do implement larger projects, the roofs, the blacktop, things of that nature. So that will continue along if we do indeed build a new building or, keep maintaining the high school. Dr. Rittenhouse is...
Like this room we painted 2 years ago because we have meetings here. I mean,
Yeah.
you do a great job.
So we do. Since the beginning of school, we've probably received 200 to 300 work order requests from teachers, administrators, everything, paint my classroom, put my bookshelves together, the toilet leaks, things of that nature. So we do run through them.
My own and my own job, so I get it. I just had electricians with me today, so I understand. But
We do have a preventive maintenance program for all the HVAC equipment, the electrical equipment, so.
One thing I would add, you heard tonight Gretchen did a property committee report. One thing I would recommend is going on the website and looking under our board section where we always post the minutes to any of our meetings, including property, finance, and so forth, especially as we start getting into the project. That's a really good place to look to get updates about what are we talking about in those committee meetings. The committee meetings are also open to the public. So we always publicize when they are. We put an agenda up. But if you can't get there because you're busy, but you want to know what are we working on, Craig always discusses when we are working on projects within the district in terms of maintenance and so forth. So you'll see that there will be rotating projects. Most of them, as I said, the big projects during the breaks when the students aren't here, and in the summer. The summer is when we do our tennis court resurfacing. It's when we do the macadam. It's when we do the cracks in the sidewalks. But they're working throughout the year as well. Yes.
So my question is actually about the athletic fields. So not all of the surfaces are going to be turf. I'm assuming there's still going to be a fair amount of grass. So we can't even keep up with the grass fields that we have now. We can't water them. The field hockey field, you've already talked about it at length. It's a disaster. So we are going to have fields and other properties. Can we purchase the equipment to water
Yeah, it is a good question. The biggest thing maintaining fields is irrigation. We need to get water on them. We have portable systems
They
to,
don't get used.
we put them out as much as we can. You've seen the big sprinkler out on the field hockey. Yeah, yes. So we rotate it around to the fields. It's really inadequate. We're not getting enough water on those fields, so proper drainage, proper
We
irrigation.
know all that, but what
Yeah.
can we do
Mhm.
now? Because we still have 3/4 of a season now. We
Mhm.
have next year. So
Correct.
what will
Yeah.
we be doing, just like the maintenance of the building, cleaning,
Right.
things like that? What are we gonna do? We can't just say, throw in the towel and say, you know what, screw it, we're not gonna, we'll deal with it when we
Right.
have turf fields.
Is there an opportunity for well water?
There is. Dr. Rittenhouse House and Mr. Payne have had that conversation. What we need is the water supply. We can buy as many sprinklers as we need, but if you don't have the adequate water, the water pressure there, it's not going to help. So we've had conversation about putting in large water mains and having those outlets at each field. It's an extensive project. It's expensive. We are looking into the renovation to put the proper irrigation we need in all our grass fields. But for the next year or two, that's the things we're discussing. And
Can we find other locations for practice? And, I mean, this is one where one team literally spent almost 2 out of the 3 weeks for preseason in the gym. That's not the same game. It's not even a turf game. So it is one of those things that you've already mentioned it, but we're gonna go through 3/4 of a season, and then next year, the same situation. That field's not gonna get any better. Is there anything that can be done? Like, can we move to LaSalle? Can we do something else to help the cause? Because you're not gonna.
I don't know, Jason, do you want to address that? I mean, I'm sure, my guess is, and I'm putting people on the spot because it's not something we've talked about, and my guess is they're utilizing their fields for their teams and their practices. I know as a community, we're very landlocked. We have no field space. That's why the community sends their soccer teams over to us. So that's one of the issues we face, is we don't have fields in the community. We end up hosting a lot of those different teams, and that creates a huge drain on the available resources that we have. Anybody else?
I say by the cemetery.
Anyone on the board?
I do. I
Gretchen?
just want to address that we talk about the fields, I think, almost every property committee meeting. It's like, what do we do about the fields, and are we going to do this project? And if we're going to do this project, we don't want to put too much money into the fields, but how much money do you put in the fields to maintain? And it's definitely been top of mind for years now. So, I think we do have to think more about it, especially as we start talking about moving all the fields around.
And it's a township issue, too. It's not just our issue as a district. It's really a community issue. And, we need to engage other folks in this conversation about responsibility for the fields that their children are playing on.
Well, I will say that it's true. The only field that's green is the football field. And the only green field that's safe is the football field. And it's got a giant stadium, and I do think that there is an equity to the other teams that are playing. And to not have, so if you have soccer and you have field hockey that are playing right now, and there are 2 of those sprinkler systems, one should be on every other day on the field hockey field, and one should be on every other day on the soccer fields. To me, that seems fair, but they're not. And the field that's green is the football field.
Is that feasible to do what she's proposing to have, to at least make a move in some sense for, this 3/4 of this season?
And next year's season. I think there should be equity in where those are and how a schedule, and that it's known that on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or whatever it is, that they're gonna be water.
Yeah, we do water the fields at every opportunity we can. The field hockey field gets cut so low because of the sport, so that grass takes so much longer to rebound. You really shock that grass, but we do water that, and it just takes longer to come back. The soccer fields are getting so much use from not only our teams, but all the community use, 7 days a week. They're used Saturday, Sunday, and all through the week. So we've had literally hundreds of children out there. They just trample the field down. That, no matter how much water, there's going to be an issue with the amount of use. So again, it comes down to proper irrigation. And in order to do that, as Ms. Sapinski said, how much money do you spend right now putting in water mains, large diameter water mains? So if we spend, say, $50,000, $60,000
I would
to
never
put a
suggest
temporary system out there.
putting in irrigation
Yeah.
on a field that's gonna be lasting for a year and a half,
Right.
never.
Right.
But I'd be curious to see the schedule of the watering, because I live across the street and I see it, and I don't necessarily believe that it's watered as often as you say that it is. I could be wrong.
Well, we can try. Now there's games we can't water on game day because the field it'll be muddy. So we are
I think maybe starting with summer, there should be another system of watering schedule that is adequate, because we could go on for a while, and we shouldn't. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I think that Dave, yes.
I don't know that guy.
Yes.
I just wanted to find out more about the financing in terms of the project, whether or not there's any kind of state programs that could be allocated to the development of the project.
So I'm going to ask Mr. King, our business manager, to talk about the proposals for financing that we as a district have to undertake, and then the Plan-Con process, which is really our state reimbursement process. And by the way, we've gone through that state reimbursement process continually on other projects that we've done over the years in the district as well.
Why do they always put the finance guy last? Dr. Hacker shows all the issues that we're facing, has all the solutions of how this is going to go. Dave gets everybody excited about what the new school is going to look like, and then they put the money guy on. Well, as Dave, but keep this in mind also. As Dave indicated, the world is your oyster on the design, but I'm the guy to make sure that that oyster doesn't get too big, along with the board and the superintendent. What we did in the feasibility study, as well as giving us solutions to some of the problems that we're facing, they also applied some cost estimates to all of this. From that report, and working with our financial manager, or financial consultant, we determined that approximately $65 million is going to be the cost based on the feasibility study. Now, this was done back in the spring of 2015. So when we looked at that, that means there's going to be 3 different bond issues, 1 in each of 3 years. The average cost of those 3 issues means approximately a 2% tax increase to fund just the new debt on the $65 million. So what we then looked at was, okay, well, how do we now we have an idea. And again, as you talked, this is high-level stuff. This is early on. This is the initial plan. I think one of the things that we're going to find as we get closer to the start date, as we start getting a better idea of what the entire scope is with the workshop meetings and all of that, we hope to bring some of that cost down off the 65. So that's one. We need better estimates. We got to get closer to the event. We got to figure out what it is we actually want to do. What was presented in the feasibility study seems to have addressed all of the issues that were raised by the administration, the staff at each of the locations, but now we really got to hone it down, figure out exactly what we want to do. So we got to get better estimates, number one. Number two, we have to look at, can we reduce the amount even further by using some of the funds that are available, fund balance. We talked about phase one was the stadium. Well, maybe we can fund that through available funds and we can reduce the amount of borrowing to get that 2% even lower. We also talked briefly, Mr. Thorne and I, about operational savings. Enfield's an old school. Costs a lot of money to maintain. It's not very energy efficient. A lot of what's in the feasibility study addresses high school HVAC issues. Also, not very efficient at all. We get those upgraded, we start getting some operational savings. But to be honest with you, we're not relying on those because we are building a bigger building down at Antonelli. So that's going to cost more to run. But we're looking at that to see what we can garner out of that. In addition to that, it was mentioned in the finance update about the TTC parcel. We're hearing from the county that they have approved development of the TTC parcel, which is off of Ridge Avenue. We're looking at 32 age-qualified homes, 125-unit skilled nursing facility. If all that comes to fruition, as the plans are, that could add about $1 million of new revenue. So that will certainly help us fund a lot of this new debt that we're proposing, or we initially estimated. The other thing that we want to look at is where in the other, we have to manage, as we have been over the last, well, since I've been here 3 or 4 years, and presumably before that, other components of the budget, how that is growing. Over the last 4 years, we've been at either a 1.7 or 1.9% tax increase. We've been trying to manage those pieces. We need to continue to do that to see if there's more savings that we can get out of there to further reduce how that piece is moving so that we can better absorb whatever the ultimate debt is. So that's, in a nutshell, where we're at early on, scope of how we're going to fund or look at how we're funding this project.
May I?
noticed in your report for the, sorry, did you want to talk?
No, I actually wanted to add, is that okay?
I didn't see the red light.
No, it's pretty bright.
I need one of those.
You should. You can borrow this one. No, I think to be a little more blunt, I think the question is, are the taxes going to go up? And I think the answer is yes. It's just, I think as a board, our goal is to try to figure out how to provide facilities that are needed for the district and for us to remain a competitive community to live in, while at the same time figuring out how to pay for it. I think Mr. Rayer is also kind of the same mindset. Figuring out how to pay for it while minimizing the impact on the residents of the community. It's just one of those things where it's not, unfortunately, it's not a for-profit entity, so you can't cover the cost elsewhere other than tax. Go ahead.
In relation to the cost?
I was going to, I know you wanted to say something.
No, yeah, I mean, wholeheartedly, yes. To keep up with the Joneses of the next township, we got to maintain our facilities and upkeep.
I don't think the goal is to try to keep up. I think the goal is to upgrade facilities that are in need of upgrading. I don't think we're doing this just because someone else has something and we want it. That would be.
Yeah, and I don't deny that the facilities don't need to be upgraded. Yes, they need to be upgraded.
And if we want to be a community that attracts people who want to move here and live here and send their kids to our schools, we can't let the facilities go the way some urban communities have.
We do know that the 2% that Mr. King referred to translates, if we go out for the debt that we envision based on the $65 million, it's approximately $800,000. So the question is, how do you take that $800,000 that's added to your budget each year for debt service and offset that somehow? And that's why we talked about if we can perhaps take some of our reserves, our fund balance, and use it to offset some of the debt. The other question is, if we do get development on those township-approved properties, and we can get approximately what we estimate is a little over $1 million a year in assessment revenue, that helps to offset that $800,000. So, that's what we're talking about in terms of if you see it going up, if you see your budget going up because of these additional expenses, including debt service, then you have to either cut your expenses in other areas or find a way to offset that. So that's exactly what we're looking at, and fund balance is one of those areas. We've got a fairly significant fund balance. A lot of it is allocated towards some of the maintenance projects that we've talked about in our long-range plan, but we want to take a look at that and see, can we take any of that and put it towards a project? Other things that we need, for example, in the district, since we can't put it specifically towards debt, we may be able to put it towards other things and then free up some of the money in the general budget to help pay so we don't have to raise taxes at a really high level.
And I saw that the Montgomery County assessment up there on the board with the bar graph, that was utilized, I think, in the development also for the ERDENHEIM development. You had, in the beginning of your slides, it was Montgomery, it was Montgomery.
Montgomery County Planning Commission, who did our demographic study. Yes.
Yes, enrollment. And one of my questions coming in to the meeting was the threshold. Where is that threshold? And there was the threshold. In the development of the buildings currently, to meet that threshold is a wonderful thing. How do we protect ourselves, not necessarily ourselves, but the community that is in place 10 years from now, 20 years from now, so that, when they're circling around and debating about the development of or maintaining of structures, how do we ensure that, the buildings are able to, what's the lifespan to keep up? Because, maybe that threshold's going to dip,
Yeah.
or maybe it's going to go up.
Yeah.
But there's only going to be so much development. I guess there's only so many parcels left in the community itself. So it's basically going to plateau, and I think that's kind of where that...
Yeah, that went through 2023. So, you're talking about, how many years from now, 6, 7, 8 years from now, and we don't know actually what's going to happen, because one of the things that they look at, in addition to census information, is they look at birth rate information, and they can project out, based on the birth rates, which kids will be entering kindergarten and going through the system. Right now, we're at a point where we can't project that. So, you have to wait over time to give it that opportunity before you can start projecting that out. But one of the things that the architecture group has experience with is looking at how do you plan for building a building into the future so that we can avoid the issues we ended up having with the current school that's way too small for the projected population. You kind of have to err on the side of saying we're going to put in more space, but you don't want to put in too much space that maybe 10 years from now, if you have a dip, is going to be overly big. So that's kind of the balance, I think, that the architects help you with based on their experience. Nancy? Yeah, one second.
Excuse me, Mr. Ray, I would like to, you're good? Are you sure? Okay. Oh, I didn't know I could do that.
Holy cow. It's okay, Ken, go ahead, Ken.
I just want to clarify the $800,000 number that you hear. That's in each of the 3 years on average. It's not just $800,000 added to the budget one time. It's $800,000 in year 1, year 2, year 3. 2.4 million. That's going to ultimately get added to the budget. I just wanted to make sure that everybody doesn't walk out thinking 65 million is going to cost $800,000 a year. It's much more than that, but that's how we build. It comes in at 2% per year for 3 years, and then the mills are built, and then we can pay the debt service. Just want to make sure
That's a
we're
question.
clear.
I think it's very important that the research that we're using to project our needs for the future are good numbers. And I say that because I sat on the committee 10 years ago when we were talking about ERDENHEIM, and at that time, the projection of the population was that most of the original owners of Springfield, the senior citizens, had left, and that the new families had moved in. Our population was flat. There is no land to build on. 30% of the population goes to private schools because of legacy. We're were flat. The recession came, schools closed, our population obviously grew, and the education emphasis of it being community schools where you had a K through 5 Erdenheim, a K through 5 Enfield, changed to a lower school and an upper school, and Erdenheim ended up being built and was too small to data. I just want to make sure that if we're going to spend this kind of money, that it fits the bill, because Erdenheim's not that old, and it's still not, and it's not working 10 years later.
So I'm going to let the experienced architect, who's been involved in many, many building projects, talk a little bit about the process that they used to try to plan ahead, because you're right. You know, you can have all the studies done in the world, but it won't predict necessarily what's going to be 15 years from now. So hopefully when you're trying to plan the design and the construction, you think to the future, what if we had a bump in the population? How would we accommodate those students?
Okay. And just one thing about the demographic study. You guys have the luxury of a county that actually has the ability to generate demographic and enrollment studies. Most of the counties around us do not have that. So because they actually know what your birth rates and your churn rates within the district, the other thing that they know is they do know housing starts, and they also know any of the movement through. So I can't help with the issue that you really saw years ago, which is it said one thing, they grew anyway. So there's no way the crystal ball is not always there, as you know. So what do we do as the people who are planning this now? Advantage A is you have a larger site. That site is very tight. It's pretty landlocked. It's pretty hard to create an area to add. We went after the project with the cafeteria addition, and all of us architects wondered where you even add a cafeteria addition. So that's a big challenge. You have more room down there. What we do as the designers then is we add a percentage to size and build the core larger. Core being, and I'm sorry, I know it didn't happen over here, but add the cafeteria core so it's larger, the kitchen core so it serves larger, make sure your arts, your musics, and your gyms are large enough to accommodate larger programs should they come, and then make it very simple on the building to add if you need to by creating an easy space to add a couple classrooms if you need, and then make sure all the systems will handle that. So that's what we would give you at this point to try to move forward and give you room on that site to add. So there's no magic elixir, there's no crystal ball about what's going to happen. The best we can do as a team is to figure out how to create the core large enough to accommodate that.
Did we not have and because I'm new to this, obviously my children are slightly younger, did we not have that guidance, or as well as we should have with Erdenheim, so that what we're hearing
I wasn't here when that was
I'm just
planned,
curious if this is
I can't address that. I wasn't here when the building was planned or when it was built. That was after.
I feel good about what you're saying. I'm just wondering if that's maybe what happened there, that we didn't have the guidance that we needed.
Again, I think what Dave said is, we know, and you're hearing it going into it, that there's a process that's in place that tries to prevent those issues from taking place. But there's no guarantee. And I think that's important to state too, that, I can't stand here today, and neither can Dave, and tell you that 20 years from now, somebody won't be saying, we should have built on 4 extra classrooms back then, and lambasting my name and his. So you guys are my defenders, because I can't make those guarantees today about 20 years from now, but you try moving into the project, as Dave described, to try to plan ahead in the eventuality that you will have growing population.
I think what is also really important is the planning process, because ultimately, just like tonight, I think there were things that did break down during the Erdenheim planning process. You brought up quite a few of them, but, I think that that's what's so important about having an architect and an administration that really does want to include, everybody's voice and hear what we need to hear and work through the issues we need to work through as much as we possibly can. Obviously, again, there is no crystal ball, but that we can just try to see this through as a community and work through it that way.
Yeah, could I add on to that before you guys go? I've had my red light on forever, but I guess it can be turned off by Gretchen.
Somebody let that man
Gretchen
speak.
keeps turning it off on me. I just wanted, I think, echo that. I think it's so awesome to see people from the community here today and the insights you can add to this process. So when we say we're going to have that workshopping and community, please come, tell your friends, get more involved, because we are about to say we want to spend $1,000 more a year per child in this district to do these things. So I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I think we have to do many of these things to address some of the issues we have. But it'd be great to have feedback and everybody's input to make sure we do it the best we darn well can, at this time with the people we have in our township. So please get involved and let other folks know about it.
And I'll just piggyback on that by saying this is a start. This is not the community meeting, but this is an overview, and this is a very good start. But as we've described to you, the intent is to continue to have meetings and bring people out, and we're going to be answering a lot of questions. And as David described, people need to be a part of the process because it's the community here. These are your schools, these are your kids, and we need that level of input, and we need questions, and we need concerns raised that maybe we haven't thought of. So Dorothy and Bob, by the way, thank you for that traffic description around the area where you live. I appreciate that. No, we appreciate it.
Actually, over the past 12 years that I've lived there, we have made progress. The first 5 or 6 years, they didn't care. People came in the wrong ways and everything else. But now we actually have the principal, the acting principal, administrators, the fitness man. They're all out there when school begins to say, don't go that way, go this way. So it's really, and they've redone parking lots.
That's like our principal. He stands out there too, guiding traffic every morning.
Listen this morning, so, this morning they weren't great listeners, so.
That's okay, let them be special.
So thank you all for coming out, for sharing your questions and raising several wonderful points. As we keep saying, this is a start. We have a lot to think about. But as everyone on the board has already said to all of you, we need your voices. We need you to be interested and talk to everyone. We're going to continue as we set up more meetings to advertise this so people really have a good, thorough understanding of what it is we're talking about doing and how the process will unfold. So thank you. I'm going to turn it over at this point. Dave, did you want to add anything? Okay. So we are done with this portion. Yes, Dorothea.
I was going to say that as a general rule, I think that Dr. Hacker has done a phenomenal job when she came in, because up until her entrance into here, this community, as far as I knew, had very little information when it came to this school district. And since Dr. Hacker has come here, we have had a whole heck of a lot more information. It's been fed to the community. So I just want to thank her for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. So you are welcome to stay. Actually, Mr. Payne and Dr. Rittenhouse are going to talk about another hot topic, which is the unfortunate demise of our athletic season with varsity football. I asked if they would give a brief explanation to keep everyone apprised of what led into that decision, and then we will go into our board motions that need approval. So if you're not interested in hearing about football, now's the time to scoot.
It's better than coffee. Here, I'm not sure. I'll take some water.
Thanks a lot.
I just want to thank David for his presentation to us this evening. Thank you very much.
Good to go?
Go ahead.
All right, so just some back history with our football program. This is my 4th year here, so my data goes back only for the past 3 seasons.
For the past 3 years, we've been JV and varsity combined. Our roster's have been about 40 players deep, which is low. If you compare that to our conference and to neighboring schools, you're looking at 65, 75, 80. The high end in our conference is going to have, well, the real high end is going to have 3 teams. They're going to have a freshman football team. They're going to have a junior varsity, which is mostly sophomores and mostly juniors, and they'll have a varsity, which comprise mostly of seniors. So we're looking at schools in terms of full student population are 2 or 3 times our size. That's our schedule. So when you're picking from a population 2 or 3 times ours, pulling out players for sports per season, right? They've got more total heads to pick from. And we've been okay. We've hung at 40, 45. We've been able to maintain both JV and varsity football for the last 3 years. For the most part, Friday nights have been mostly upperclassmen, and the size of per player that we've had in recent years and the quality of player that we've had in the recent years has been a little bit more than what we had this year. The outgoing senior classes the last couple of years were full of players who had played in youth programs. We don't have a township program here, so for us to get pockets of kids who have played for 7 or 8 years before they get to us, the opportunity for that is low. Those families and those kids have to seek out programs at Upper Dublin or PW if they want that. So a lot of the players that enter the high school as 9th graders have only played in 7th grade and 8th grade, or just 8th, or have played in neither. And this is their first experience with the sport. And football, unlike many of the other things that we offer, places some kids at risk. There's a whole lot more physical contact and built-in violence into the game of football than most of the other things that we offer. So the inexperience level and the youth of our players and the physical size and the Friday night readiness is the term I've been using with this group. It was just lower than what we've had in the last 3 years. The number of players we had that I felt comfortable putting out on a Friday night against the competition that we face, the physical readiness, the mental readiness, I use this example a lot. I was a small high school player, but I had played for 8 years. I knew how to defend myself. I started when I was 8. We just don't have a lot of those kids this year. And as we evaluated the program and we looked at the readiness of what we had, we felt like the JV schedule was the most appropriate environment for our kids to have a positive experience playing a sport, which is ultimately our goal with this, and the most safe environment for these students. It came at quite a cost to all of our conference. Forfeiting hurt all of the schools that we were scheduled to play. Every win that we would have had would have been bonus points for them had they beaten us. And since we won't have any wins, we've hurt all of the teams on our schedule. I've been trying to maintain relationships with those people. They have been very understanding. So when we entered summer camp this year, we had 32. So that's about 8 to 10 less than what we were used to starting camp with. Within a week, we had scrimmaged once. We had had practices once or twice a day. We were floating in the mid-20s. After our opening game, we were under 20. We had 17 healthy bodies after the opening week versus Octorara. I don't want to speak poorly about anyone. Octorara was one of the best matchups we could find for our school, and that was a very lopsided win where we lost 3 more players. So when you put all of that in perspective, that was the easiest game we had on the schedule against the most physically appropriate team we could find. The next 9 weeks were going to be significantly harder for us. And as I looked at the 17 that were left, I just didn't feel as though moving forward on that path was a good thing for our kids.
Jason, what was the score of that game? Well, you talked about it's lopsided.
Yeah, it was 46-20, and we scored at the end. I mean, it was probably bigger than that when they had emptied their bench, and we still had what we had was what we had, so we couldn't empty the bench. So yeah, they had kind of called the dogs off, and we made it a little bit more respectable.
There was also, I believe, a game with Germantown.
That was
JV.
So after we made the decision,
Sorry.
after they made the decision to cancel the varsity season, we did keep our JV schedule, and so we took our 17 JV players, or the remaining roster. We took to GA to play their JV. They only had 15 players for their JV team. They beat us
46-0.
46-0, 48-0. So with reservation, it was validation, right? Could you imagine what a varsity environment would have looked like with the same team that we have, right? We offered opportunities for our seniors to stay in the program. All of our opponents said, Jay, you got 6 seniors, let them play Mondays on JV. They were very accommodating to us. When we gave that option to our seniors, they chose not to take it. It was not an environment in which they were eager to play in, which we were respectful of. So we've had a lot of conversation about what we do moving forward. We've had some voices asking for Friday nights, moving the JV games to Friday nights. That comes with some logistical problems. Most of the schools that we are going to play are built like us in terms of the coaching staff. It's one coaching staff, and they coach JV and varsity. When we forfeited our Friday nights with these schools, they went out and found other teams to play so that their kids didn't lose an experience. That means to get their JV team at our field on that Friday night, they would have to split their coaching staff and some of their players who might play JV and varsity. It was very difficult to pull this to try to pull a number of these Friday nights off. We did have one who was very willing. It was a very poor matchup for us. It was like having the varsity conversation. And their JV program is going to have students at 250, 260, 270 pounds. And our 14 and 15-year-old young guys, who I love, who are working so hard, they're 135 pounds.
Because they're the freshmen.
They're freshmen. Yeah, they're 150 pounds. It wasn't an appropriate matchup. And for me to endorse putting them out on a Friday night under the lights when I know that we would have a huge turnout, right, because of how much we all miss it, I thought that was going to create an embarrassing situation for those students. We can't stand and say we're making this decision for the best interest of kids and then set up a JV game on a Friday night that is overly embarrassing. That was hard for me to balance. But it was a clear decision. We are in the midst of 2 very good projects that I'd like to make you aware of. One is after the season ends, adding another game to the season. That would be on a Friday night. It would be a JV game versus another team's JV that I think is an appropriate matchup for us physically, where we can incorporate some of our traditions that we're going to miss a little bit along the way. We've had a couple seniors who didn't have a choice to come back because they were injured. We've had a couple seniors who, although chose not to play, have chosen to coach. So we can bring a senior celebration to that Friday night for those guys. We can bring the homecoming bonfire back for that event. So we're working on that. I have a school that's agreed, but one of the concerns I have right now is we still got to play for 6 or 7 more weeks, and the 17 we have still got to be healthy by the time we hit week 11. So we're going to be smart about that. Homecoming is going to still occur. I'm really close to having all of the details worked out on that. I was hoping to be able to unveil that tonight. I'm missing one critical component, and that would be referees. And so I'm going to hold that back at this point, but hopefully tomorrow or the day after we can send out a community e-blast that will announce our plans for homecoming. Mrs. Buckley, Student Council, Dr. Hacker, Dr. Rittenhouse, and myself, we've been working on this a lot. And we have a really creative idea for what to do with it moving forward. And I encourage you to keep your eyes out for an e-blast regarding
and
that.
a lot of the homecoming plans are student-driven. There's via Mrs. Buckley and Student Council, my own sons, 2 of them. And just to kind of reiterate what Mr. Payne said, I traveled to Octorara. My son's a senior on the team. And, as a parent, I went to the game and certainly watched that game and the JV game. And then after I saw Octorara, obviously I had some concerns. And people looked at the score, but at one point it was 40-0. And we were in what's called the mercy rule. And not having a first down to the 3rd quarter. They pulled their kids at halftime, and they were very nice about it. I talked at length to their superintendent about football, about high school football, who just happened to be up on the press box, and we talked almost the whole night. I talked to their athletic director. I talked to their booster president. They really were very nice and accommodating, as was Germantown Academy. They're 2 classy schools and how they handled it, but just seeing the youth out on the field. And those kids have worked hard. Coach Shelley and the staff has worked hard. The community's been great. The parents have been great, the booster parents. It just made sense to make the decision. And our goal, obviously, there's two goals, and the first goal is to maintain a program this year, and we're doing that, and the second goal would be to have a program next year. I mean, they're goals, and having a senior on the team, I've seen a little bit of everything. We have a district championship under our belt. We lost a district championship last year, and then looking at his 9th grade year, and then this year, it's been enjoyable to be a high school parent. He's had a great experience, but this year we just felt it was in the best interest of all the players and for their safety and for the community. So.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, and I said it to both of you before, and I know I'm probably speaking for the rest of the board, that we absolutely support the team that's playing this year. We support the kids. We really want them to continue. In no way do we feel like we don't want to have a football program in the school district. And I know for myself, anything that you need from us to help rally the spirits of the team or the community behind them, we would definitely be willing to do it.
Thank you.
And one thing that we have also talked about that maybe, Chuck, you can talk about in a bit more detail, because we've all had extensive conversations about this, and we've met with Coach Shelley many, many times as well to talk about this. And as we talked about before, we brought the kids into the conversation. But there are a number of recruitment measures in place, as well as motivational measures in place with our current junior high school students, our middle school students. Chuck, you have intimate knowledge of that because of Mrs. Rittenhouse,
Yes,
so if you can talk to that, that would help.
And just some of the things we're currently doing, we have a very active parent booster group. I'm very involved with that, as is my wife and probably 10 or 15 parents. Monday night, we extended an invitation to the middle school players and parents for a dinner Monday night. And we had 15 middle school kids and 6 or 7 parents. We had delicious pasta from Ambler Pizza. I'll give them a plug. And the kids were thrilled in the cafeteria. I don't find the cafeteria that exciting, but 8th graders really liked it. And Coach Shelley gave them a talk, and that was very positive. We have 2 more dinners scheduled. Same thing next Monday night, and then I think the following Thursday, again, inviting the kids up to break bread with our players. We have an overnight camp at Albright College, which we did this past summer, and we had our 30 kids there. It was great experience for football. It was also a great experience for them to be on a college campus. I went up to see that. We have a very strong, really kind of non-existent in any other district, but we have a Springfield Township High School Football Alumni Association, and they literally have raised tens of thousands of dollars. They give a $2,500 scholarship every year. They cut the cost of the football camp this year. It was $250. I think the kids ended up paying $125. So those things are in place. Currently we want to grow those. For the future, we have to encourage our players to play. We have a lot of competition in the area. We have some fine private schools in the area, and particularly for football. And we're in competition with them, and they're in competition with us. I'd really like to see the community look to develop a 7-on-7, a flag, or a tackle football feeder program. That can't be done at the high school, but really in Suburban 1, there's probably no other football program without a feeder program. Certainly not at Upper Dublin or Wissahickon as Mount Airy. Upper Dublin is Upper Dublin, and the Upper Moreland feeder program. They're all excellent programs, and if we could look to the community, and I certainly could help develop a 7-on-7 or flag or tackle feeder program. My son Harry is a 7th grade football player now, so I'm back in the game, and so you'll have me for several more years. I'd like to develop a relationship with UDJA, St. Jen CYO's excellent, Roxborough, Mount Airy. That's where our kids play, particularly with St. Jen CYO, to really develop that relationship. There is a flag football program, grades 1 through 6, over at the Traymore Field that I was involved in. It's a nice program where the baseball is, right near the fire station, and that's through the Park and Rec. Certainly work with them. Off-season team building activities. work weekly meetings and events with the high school, middle school teams, Coach Shelley, and the boosters. We just started that this week. A couple weeks ago, our high school kids went to an Eagles game, to try to do those things. And I think one of the most critical things is the facility improvements. That field, the field, not that field, the field, having turf, maybe improved lighting, et cetera, is really great for any program. Forget football, even for field hockey. Our field hockey girls are at a distinct disadvantage playing on that field, the grass field, and then they go to another school and they play on turf. It's a faster field. But I think all those things, going forward, but I think the most important thing is encouraging our kids to play, at the high school and in the middle school. So there's a very big group of freshmen. There's a very big group of 7th and 8th graders, and we're hoping that translates into varsity football next year. So some of the things we're currently doing and want to do. All right.
Good to move on to new business. Okay, new business. Number 1, personnel. Personnel attachment, recommended motion. The Board of School Directors approves the following personnel as presented in the attachment: administrative personnel, confidential personnel, certificated personnel, support personnel, temporary personnel, extra pay for extra responsibilities, conference workshop attendance. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Okay, Mr. King?
Mr. Chapman. Mr. Lapidus. Aye. Ms. Sarsfield.
Aye.
Dr. Karatowski.
Aye. Number 2, Blackboard website agreement. Recommended motion. The Board of School Directors approves the 3-year contract between Springfield Township School District and Blackboard beginning July 1st, 2016, attachment K. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chapman. Aye. Mr. Lapidus. Ms. Sarsfield. Aye. Dr. Karatowski. Aye. Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Number 3, Montgomery Virtual Program. Recommended motion. The Board of School Directors approves the agreement between the School District of Springfield Township and the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit for the Montgomery Virtual Program beginning June 6, 2016 for the 2016-2017 school year, attachment L. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Second. Any questions or comments?
Can I just have some clarification on the virtual program? Is this part of the high school curriculum?
It's our online, it's sponsored through the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit. It's our online credit recovery and summer school program.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Chapman. Aye. Mr. Lapidus. Aye. Ms. Sarsfield. Aye. Dr. Karatowski. Aye. Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Number 4, Thespian Troop 1154, 2016 PA State Thespian Conference, recommended motion. The Board of School Directors approves Thespian Troop 1154 to attend the 2016 Pennsylvania State Thespian Conference at Central York High School in York, PA from December 1st through December 3rd, 2016. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chapman. Aye. Mr. Lapidus. Aye. Ms. Sarsfield. Aye. Dr. Karatowski. Aye. Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Number 5, Mill Creek School, recommended motion. The Board of School Directors approves the agreement between the School District of Springfield Township and the Mill Creek School for student 160920-01 for the 2016-2017 school year, beginning September 12th, 2016. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Second. Any questions or comments?
Chapman. Aye. Mr. Lapidus. Aye. Ms. Sarsfield.
Aye.
Dr. Terrateschi.
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Number 6, approval of change order. Recommended motion. The Board of School Directors approves the attached negative change order number MC-002 with Apex Plumbing and Heating, Inc. in the amount of negative $15,000 for the work to be completed by the district's supplementary contractor for the administrative building HVAC project attachment M. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Any questions or comments?
Negative?
It
means that.
Mr. Chapman. Aye. Mr. Lapidus. Aye. Ms. Sarsfield.
Aye.
Dr. Terrateschi.
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Number 7, World Book Agreement. Recommended motion. The Board of School Directors approves the contract between Springfield Township School District and World Book, Inc. beginning September 1st, 2016 through August 31st, 2017, attachment N. Is there a motion? Motion. Is there a second? Second. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Mr. Chapman. Aye. Mr. Lapidus. Aye. Ms. Sarsfield.
Aye.
Dr. Terrateschi.
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Number 8, Nestle Waters Agreement. Recommended motion. The Board of School Directors approves the agreement with Nestle Waters for the rental of a water cooler and replacement water in the amount of $600 annually. Attachment O. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chapman. Aye. Mr. Lapidus. Aye. Ms. Sarsfield.
Aye.
Dr. Terrateschi.
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Number 9, Solicitor Services. Recommended motion. The Board of School Directors approves the agreements for solicitor services with Fox Rothschild LLP for the period of July 1st, 2016 until June 30th, 2017. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chapman. Aye. Mr. Lapidus. Aye. Ms. Sarsfield.
Aye.
Dr. Terrateschi.
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Congratulations.
You were.
Took a few months to get it on the internet.
Are there any public comments on non-agenda items? All right, well, thank you everyone for coming tonight. There are some future meeting dates. Interim board meeting will be Wednesday, October 5th, 2016, 7 p.m. in the Freeze Memorial Lobby. There's a school board meeting Tuesday, October 8th, 2016, 7 p.m. in the Freeze Memorial Lobby. Board committee meetings, there is an academic affairs meeting scheduled for Monday, September 26, 2016, 5:30 p.m. in the administration building. I want to thank Nancy for your wonderful presentation this evening. It was very well organized. I appreciate it. And to thank our community members who came out. And those who stayed. So thanks, everyone, and have a good night. Motion to adjourn.